when you turn them over, you're paying attention to how the cards have fallen, right? What's on top of what, and then you kind of go from there. And that would give me a whole different reading, wouldn't it? Happy Friday! This is the second video in the Finding the Fae week 2, and it's all about tarot. All about tarot. Up here you can see I have a ton of fairy decks. Yay. I have a lot of fairy decks, a lot of fae decks. And if you guys want to this, you know, for a VR video, show me all the fairy decks you guys have, or fae decks, fae specific decks you have. Fae decks can be mythical creatures because mermaids fall into fae, unicorns fall into fae, goblins fall into fae, all that kind of stuff falls into fae. My requirements for a fae or fairy deck personally has to be at least 50% of the deck. Has to include either fairy or fae, and then I consider it a fae deck, because sometimes you get decks that might have only one fairy in it, but the whole rest of the deck is just people doing normal people things. Or you might get one unicorn in a deck that's like a specialty card, but none of the rest of the deck even has anything to do with fae creatures. So my requirement is, you know, that 50%, at least half of the deck for me needs to have that fae creature aspect or fairy in it in order to be considered a fae deck or one of my fairy decks. That's how I do it. So, I went ahead and put up a poll earlier this week to find out if you guys just wanted me to share like my favorite deck, a couple decks, or all of my collection. You guys chose just for me to pick my favorite and then share that with you. Just have a little talk. So that's what we're going to do. So my favorite decks to work with are the Fairy Lights Tarot, which I've talked about on my channel many, many, many times. The reason I like working with this one is because it has a secondary card with each card. As I've said in previous ones, this deck is like, the creator created one picture, cut it in half, and one card might be the Fool and the other card is the Ten of Pentacles. And you put them together, it creates one full picture. You don't have to read them that way, but I feel like it gives a lot more to the reading when you actually find the secondary card that goes with them, because each one has a secondary card. There's no rhyme or reason that I can tell for it, and you can find the pairings online. I wrote them all down because they are not in the booklet. Okay, those pairings are not in the booklet. So I did find them online and wrote them all down in a piece of paper, which I keep in here. But I like this because of the intuitive nature of it, and because it's fairy. Obviously, it gives me a lot of fae energy vibes and like the in-between between the fairy world. Okay, the second deck that I have that I prefer to work with when I'm doing my fae readings is the Brian Froud Fairies Oracle. I got this one secondhand. I love the book. The book is phenomenal. It's amazing. Even if you don't have the cards and you want the book, get the book. Get the book, okay? But the cards are all very interesting. They're all different kinds of Brian Froud's fairy art, and by now you should know that I'm a fan of Brian Froud and his artwork. He is a believer in fairies, so, you know, that goes a long way for me, especially with a tarot deck or an oracle deck even, okay? So I use these two together. They do play nice together. It's not like they're aesthetically pleasing all the time, but they pair well together for readings, which you're going to see later for my tarot readings, all right? So let's talk about the tarot reading really quick. So I'll go ahead and put it up here on the screen. You can also find it in the journal, the digital journal. If you want to download it, it's in the description of this video. You can easily just go there, download it, and have all of the stuff available. The digital journal, the tarot spreads, and the journal prompts, okay? But let's talk about the fairy contact spread this week, because it might seem a little confusing when you're reading through it, okay? Seem a little confusing. I noticed that, so I apologize in advance. I did not mean for it to be that way, but it kind of just... Sometimes when you're trying to express something, it's a little difficult to get it to flow out right. And I think I had trouble doing that with the spread. But Rachele did a really good job of helping me work that out. So I just wanted to touch base on it. So the first question is, are the Fae trying to communicate with me? Now, I know we did some foundation work last week with some foundation tarot spreads and, kind of talking about communication too. But this is very specific to communication and how they're communicating with you. Even the journal prompt is how that fairy energy might come up for you and how it's different than other spiritual energy you might feel, right? So, are the Fae trying to communicate with me? That's the first one. 2, if they are, am I blocking that connection? Because there's things we can do to block that connection. Our fear might block that connection. Our disbelief might block that connection. Our just general where we're at in our brains or in our mindset that could cause that break in connection, right? Like that it's just not reaching us quite right. Okay. And, if they are obviously, trying to communicate with you, how have they been trying to communicate with you? And that's the third question. How is it? And then the fourth question would be, what is the message they're trying to convey? Okay. Now, if you get number 1 and it says, how are the fairies trying to communicate with me? And you don't get anything that shows them trying to communicate with you. The very last question is the if no, right? If they're not trying to communicate, if there's whatever's going on, you can refer back to the Fae Foundation spread from week 1 to evaluate how you might be communicating or how you can start that communication in a much better way, okay? Or maybe you want to try the automatic writing or anything else like that. There's other things you could do also other than a full-on spread to try to use your cards to communicate with the Fae. And you do not need a Fae deck, okay? You don't need a Fae deck to communicate with the Fae. I just prefer it. I completely prefer it. So, because it puts me in the fairy energy, and I don't know, I just like that kind of energy a lot, okay? A lot. But there are other things you can do to try to communicate with the Fae, even with your oracle cards or your tarot cards, and that's by finding a card that feels Fae to you and then meditating with it, right? Or journaling on it. Not reading what's in the book, but what comes to you internally, intuitively, because when the Fae are talking to us, they're using all of our senses, even if we don't realize it. When you're sitting down with a fairy tarot card, and it's got a fairy on it, they're listening. They're trying to see if you're listening. Why would they want to communicate with you if you don't want to listen, right? That's kind of a point. It's not going to work out. The communication's going to stop, period. They're going to stop trying. So you could take a card that feels Fae to you. Why does it feel Fae? You can explore that. Why does it feel Fae? What about it makes it fairy to you or Fae to you? How is that energy coming across? And what kind of message would that card give you? So even if it's just a regular tarot card, right? Even if it's just a basic tarot card, like say the Ace of Swords, if that was a Fae card to you, what would that be saying? What would that be communicating to you from fairy? From a Fae being, because they don't necessarily always see things the way that we do. So you're trying to see it from a different perspective, and that might open you up to that very communication that you're seeking, okay? So don't get discouraged. Don't get discouraged. Try again, because it could just be that your mindset isn't in the right place. And so maybe another time you try, you could do that. You could even work with time of day, because the Fae are more active in the twilight hours, in the in-betweens, right? So you could try even connecting when they are more active and see if that helps you with your communication with them as well. So do not be discouraged, okay? Do not be discouraged. Keep trying. Keep trying. It took me a long time to hear them, to understand what they were telling me. And it was, like I said, it's personal gnosis and it's practice. I talked about that even in my week 1 videos. It's that idea that you're practicing that listening, okay? You're practicing that listening. Okay, so I am going to be doing a fairy spread next, but I'm not actually going to be doing this particular fairy spread because I already communicate with the Fae. I already have a very strong connection with them. So what I did instead is my fairy spread is going to be in showing you how I do a fairy spread, because I don't do it in a traditional manner. I do it in a non-traditional manner, which is a way that Brian Froud has suggested. And I've done it this way for a long time. And it is a very unique way of reading and letting Fae talk to you in a way that might be a little bit more unexpected, right? So I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. And before I even get into that, I have something special for you. This book right here. This book right here. Good Fairies, Bad Fairies. I found a second copy. Okay. Found a second copy. It is an upside down book. So part of the book is right side up. Part of the book is upside down. Yeah. And it's a Brian Froud book. This is a giveaway. It's going to be a giveaway. So all you have to do to enter the giveaway, one, is you have to be in the US. I'm very sorry for anybody outside the US. I'm just not capable of spending the kind of money to send it out to non-US residents. I'm very, very sorry about that. But if you'd like to play along still, please feel free to play along. But if you would like to enter, then take a guess at how many Fae decks I own. Yeah. How many Fae decks do I own? It's not about getting the right answer. It's just about guessing. So if you guess down in the comments how many Fae decks I have, then I'm going to assume you want to enter the giveaway, unless you tell me otherwise, okay? So that's what I'm giving away. I will ship it to you at the end of the month, okay? So you have to comment. You have to comment with how many Fae decks you think I have, and you have to be in the US in order for me to send it to you. So that's that. Now I'm going to go into my Fae reading for you and explore that with you. And I hope you guys really enjoy it. I'm looking forward to seeing how the Fae interact with all of you guys. And I mentioned this later on in the video too in my reading, but next week is about fairy portals. So that's going to be so much fun. And I'm really excited to explore that with you because there's so many different ways portals can come into things. So be prepared next week that, portals are going to come into play. And any VRs you want to do, you want to show me fairy decks? Cool. You want to show me fairy books? Awesome. You want to do your spread and share that with me? Cool too. We're also going to be talking about fairy experiences coming up soon too. So don't be shy when it comes to that later on. And I want to do a live Q&A. So if you guys have any questions, please put them down in the comments and I will answer them during a live Q&A as well. I will try to do my best to answer them during the live Q&A. Now, the live Q&A may not be directly live Q&A. I haven't quite figured out if I can even do the live or how I'm going to do it. If I cannot do the live or figure out how to do it, I will do a premiere where I can actually talk to you guys in the comments for a Q&A video. So if you have any questions, put them down there so that if I do a premiere, I can have those already available to answer. And then I will be available in the premiere of the comment section to talk to you directly while that video is going, okay? So that's what's coming up next. I'm really excited for everything. This has been fun so far. I've really, really loved exploring all of this with you so far. And we're only on the second week. This is only the second week. So we got 2 more weeks to go, guys. So thank you guys so much for watching. And up next is my tarot reading. I'm going to show you how I do a fairy specific communication reading with one of the questions, which is, I think it was the journal prompt question, which is, how is the Fae energy different? What's different about it? What they want to tell me is different about it. And I wanted to do that because I thought it would be a really interesting experience in how I do my fairy readings as well. So anyways, I need some room so that I can actually play with it. So in Brian Froud's book, he has a suggested reading layout where you pick a number, and then you spread the cards out and you pick that number of cards and you lay them in whatever order it is that you think it needs to be laid out, okay? And that is going to turn into your spread, and you have to do a lot of intuitive listening. And in Brian Froud's fairy deck, a lot of the cards, the Fae in these cards, that's what they want you to do, is they want you to listen, okay? So I'm going to be using the Fairy Lights Tarot for the majority of my cards. I'm going to pick, technically I'm going to pick 4 cards, but this is a double deck, which means that this deck has 2 cards per 1 card because they go together like that. Okay, and I've showed that before. This is the Fairy Lights Tarot. So whatever card I get on top, then it'll have a secondary card that comes with it. So in total, it will make 7 cards, okay? But it's only going to be 4 cards to start out with. So I'm going to show you guys how I do the spread. It's all intuitive. This is not a defined strategy. It comes out different every single time, okay? Every single time it comes out different. So let's start out with my main 4 cards. And remember, we're talking about fairy energy, right? Fae energy and how it's different than regular spiritual energy. So let's see what comes out for me. All right, so I will move this down so you can see how I did the layout. And I tried to just do it intuitively, okay? So I'm not sure how that's going to work out just yet. So I will go ahead. I think this is my first card, just based off the feeling. And my first card is the Piper, so that's interesting. And I will have to get the deck or the book in order to read what this says too. But I'm going to go off feelings, right? So this gives me a sense of joy, okay? And music. It definitely has pronounced music, right? So sound is going to be important in fairy messages for me, which makes sense because, you know, bells. So they communicate via bells and sound with me. So that's one of the ways that is different than a lot of my other spiritual stuff, because I generally feel just energy with my spiritual stuff. But with the Fae, I feel a lot of sound related information. Okay. Let's see. I feel like this is the second card, the Fool. Okay. And then third and fourth. So it feels like it's going around. That's what it feels like. It's going around sound, if that makes sense. So my reading feels like it's the sound is the main thing, and then you're kind of going in a roundabout around that card. Interesting enough, I'm going to pull out the cards that go with these ones, and I will be right back so that I can do the full reading with you guys. All right, I'm back. So it took me a minute to find the cards. So like I said, it feels like they're going around the sound. And the question is, how is fairy energy different than all the other energy? So I've got the Fool with the 10 of Pentacles. Isn't this interesting? It's like the idea of believing in something, right? The belief in it. And that will lead you to the experience, right? Almost because it's like following through with this. The Fool has a whole journey with him, right? He goes through the whole major arcana and gets to the end, which is the World card. But here, the 10 of Pentacles is, you know, the family card. It's the all-encompassing card. It's the, you know, you got everything that you wanted kind of card. So I feel like the energy is a belief energy, right? It's subtle. And without that belief, you're not going to feel anything. It's not going to be available to you. So I feel like the Fool just stepping off into that childlike ideas is going to help me feel that kind of energy. And this might be sideways because it's hard for me to feel childlike. I struggle connecting with children, and I struggle, you know, with like playing pretend, even with my granddaughter and stuff like that. So when childlike wonder is actually much harder for me than most people think. So I can see why this might be sideways, as it's something that it's something I actually struggle with. Okay, and then we're gonna keep going, right? And so obviously music is the thing, or sound is the thing. Ace of Pentacles is that beginning, and the Three of Swords. Now, in this deck, obviously, the Three of Swords is not heart energy, though you are getting a lot of water in it. So there's emotion involved. But it's almost like a lead, right? Like a leading through. I feel like there's a whole road that goes up into this card, and there's, you know, these moons back here. I think those are moons that are in the ground right there, something like that. You're looking at them from far away. So I think that energy becomes more or stronger, bigger, and stuff like that. The more I notice it, the more I see it, the more I hear it, right? And it can lead further away if I'm not listening, or come in further if I am listening. which goes back to that childlike wonder. So I might hear the sounds, and I can attest them to Fae if I'm paying attention, right? If I'm paying attention and I'm looking for it, right? And then that moves up into this part of it, like how is that Fae energy different than other spiritual energy? I really like this, the Two of Wands with the Seven of Pentacles. I'm going to get what I put into it because it's a fair energy exchange. And I feel like that's really strong and apparent with Fae energy is if you're not willing to have that fair energy exchange, it's not even just, I put a little bit of energy into this. It's an actual fair energy exchange. They are not going to give you any more than you give them, flat out. That's just the way that it's going to be. And I feel like these cards are definitely talking about that, really, really expressing that. And I have the ability to have that fair energy exchange. That Seven of Pentacles is I'm putting in the work. I'm doing the work, which means I'm going to find those ways that the Fae energy is speaking to me. And how it's different for like other spiritual energy, it doesn't feel like, a God energy to me. A God energy to me is bigger and bolder, but a Fae energy is more subtle and you have to pay closer attention. You have to actually listen for it. And I think that's what they're trying to say is that Fae energy is a listening energy, a fair energy exchange. And that's really what I'm looking at. So really interesting reading, and that's kind of how it goes about for me. It does not always go in this way. The cards, when they come out, depending on how I'm feeling about things, they can come out in all sorts of different ways. I mean, sometimes I just feel like throwing them wherever and seeing what happens. And then by that, when you turn them over, you're paying attention to how the cards have fallen, right? What's on top of what, and then you kind of go from there. And that would give me a whole different reading, wouldn't it? Like a completely different reading. So fairy readings for me are very energy based, and I'm allowing them to speak through me and put the cards down in a way that will benefit whatever they're trying to tell me. And that's how I do my fairy. Again, next week is about portals, fairy portals, and we're going to dive into that. So it should be a really fun week of exploration, because that's what next week is all about, is exploration. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a very great day.